podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome back to the Cardiff Central podcast, where it's double-header, double delight for the Blue and Blacks. The Rags cruise past Pontypool thanks to a comprehensive second-half showing before the first team battled past Edinburgh in the rain at the Arms Park. We'll go over both those games, review the first block for Cornel van Zyl's men, preview the autumn internationals, and unfortunately, I regret to inform you, the WRU are at it again. Joining me on the panel this week, we've got Andrew Ford. Andrew, how are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you, mate.
It's Simon Jones. Simon, how are you?
I'm battling against the cold. I bravely went down to watch Cardiff play on Saturday, but yeah, recovering.
The last game of the fixture block, so you got some time to recover before
Exactly.
And Tony Esposti. Tony, how are you?
I am good. Thank you very much.
Good stuff. We'll start with that second game of the doubleheader on Saturday then, as Cardiff beat Edinburgh 2019. It was a back and forth first half with Lewis Wells for Edinburgh, then Johan Mulder for Cardiff, Charlie Shield for Edinburgh, Josh Adams for Cardiff and Ewan Ashman for Edinburgh trading tries for a 12-19 lead for the away side at half-time. Javan Sebastian scored against his former employers, and apologies to him for last week. We didn't invoke the Mulverhill rule in our team because I've just kind of forgotten that he played for Edinburgh, to be honest. He went away from the Scarlets, and then I don't know what he did for 2 years, and then he's come back. But he scored early in the second half in the El Javico derby before a tense standoff was broken by a nerveless kick from halfway by Johan Lloyd with a couple of minutes to go. A couple of three-word reactions on the internet. Glenn said, hard graft rewarded. Gareth said, heart in mouth. Rob went with grit, commitment, composure. Tom said, sense of pride. Joe went with finally a penalty. Reese said graft rightly rewarded, and Robert went once again with never in doubt, which I think is becoming a bit of a theme for Cardiff over these last few weeks as we battle past teams just about. Fordy, coming to you first, what were your general thoughts on the game?
Yeah, over the moon to get a win, especially with such a difference between kind of first 20 minutes where there was 5 tries scored, and then that second half where it was just the 8 points from us, I believe, and playing in the rain. But yeah, it's a cliche at this point, but in seasons gone by, I don't think we'd have won that game. So yeah, over the moon to have won.
Simon, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't got a great record against Edinburgh. They come and do the same job the Ospreys do on us a bit, just physically dominate us, and somehow the final whistle blows and we haven't really been in a game. So, like Connacht, it feels like the most important thing is to be beating teams like Edinburgh, like Connacht, that will be in and around those final playoff places. So yeah, I think it was really hard. It was really hard work, but we did it, and I think that's credit to the group, because I agree with Fordy. I don't think we win that game last season, the season before. It's not pretty, but especially when the conditions in the second half that really closed in. I mean, fortunately, they closed in with the wind at our back rather than us playing into it. But to get over the line, finish the block with a win, everyone can kind of rest up for a few weeks now, those that aren't on international duty, and kind of look forward to the second block. So yeah, made up about it, to be honest.
Tony?
It was brilliant. It's exactly what we've asked for them. They gave every single thing they had to finish this block as strong as possible. Echoing what Simon's just said, we ain't winning that game other years. It's interesting looking at the Cardiff website, the headlines from the last 2 games we've had are, there's the words hard fought and resilience in both of them. And I don't think Edinburgh had a 22 entry in the second half of that game, which from where we were in the first half, where it was quite back and forth, as Andrew said, and you said, like that's such a big thing. We stifled them. So proud.
Yeah, I feel obliged. Maybe the ghost of Steve is coming in to mention that playing downhill towards the clubhouse in the second half is always the correct way to go, and both Cardiff teams showed that. on the weekend. But yeah, it's definitely become. I think a few years ago it was the hope that kills you was our sort of unofficial
Yeah.
motto, and then it was kind of like trust the process and we're building and rebuilding, and now it's very much we'd have never won that in last season is our new motto as we just keep picking up these wins that no one's really expecting us to. 40, as you mentioned, we won the second half 8-0 on the night. How big of an impact was the bench on that performance?
Yeah, massive. Just like even in the first half, it was gutting to see Faletau go off after 4 minutes. But like when you've got Alan Lawrence coming off the bench in the form that he's in, it's not really a bad replacement to have. But like particularly in the second half when Azarati and Domachowski were introduced, that the shift in the scrum changed, particularly in the first half. We were never was their ball at scrum time, we were getting driven back, conceding penalties, and then there's that one scrum in the second half where it's their ball and we win the penalty and we dominate them up front. And I think that was just a huge momentum shifter as well. And then again, Ala Davis kind of what I've said before on the pod is he's that good player to have off the bench, the kind of controlling nine, the more conservative nine, and some of those kicks in the last 10 minutes were massive.
Yeah, I was going to make the point about Alan Lawrence a bit later because I don't want to labour where we in the Wales squad bit where Faletau has been ruled out now, but that Lawrence might have been in there. But I think the thing to say for Lawrence is that previously, when Faletau got injured or wasn't available, it was a real nightmare. Like you've lost your world class player, and now it doesn't really seem like much of a nightmare because Alan Lawrence is there, and there's not a huge amount of dip in what we get out of our eight when he's on the pitch, which is a massive testament to Lawrence and not a slight on Faletau at all, who's still at an extremely high level. It's all about where Lawrence is. Simon Paul put his three-word thought as controlled second half. There was some. Andrew's mentioned the Ali Davis kick in there. There was some excellent kicks from Sheedy and from Johan Lloyd as well. Are we actually a good game management team now?
Oh, don't jinx it, Dan. Don't jinx it. We've got a long season to go. I think we are, but I think some of that is what Fordy just touched on is how we're using subs as well. Because I said to my son on the terrace, I said if we can see their props off and be in the game, we've got a chance. If we can see that they're especially their tight head and their loose head, very good players, good scrummagers. And I think their props came off at 55 minutes or so. And I think Domachowski and Azarati just come on. And I think we're controlling games because we're making changes at the right point as well and being able to bring on Ali Davis, being able to bring on Sheedy just to control, which is, at the start of last season, this is what we said we wanted from those two. Wouldn't it be great to have those two coming off the bench in tight games and just controlling the game out? We didn't quite see it as much last year. But I think we are this year. I think that plays a massive role. We haven't got a great squad depth, but when we're making the changes, I don't know why Man came off at half time. I don't know whether that was a knock or something. I didn't see anything.
I've not seen anything.
Yeah,
from the club.
it was a knee injury as well. They reported, but he
okay.
got assessed in the Wales squad yesterday, and they haven't announced a replacement. So assuming it's not too bad at this point.
Yeah, but you bring on Donald, who's a different type of player, but equally aggressive, equally abrasive, ball carrier, probably a bit of a bigger line-out option, a bit bigger in the pack as well. So I think we are seeing games out. I think Edinburgh, in the last 10 minutes, went to pieces mentally. They just crumbled. I think they've been all their games have been relatively tight, other than I think they thumped Benetton, didn't they, last weekend?
Their last three losses, they including ours, it's a combined 4 points that they've lost them by.
So I just watching the game
they're
back.
us from 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, watching the game back, you could see them wilt in that last 10 minutes from that Ali Davis kind of knock on. They just kind of went even like the not kicking through the mark for the penalty and then the overthrow at the line out. If that was a Cardiff side, we'd just be sitting here going, there's something about kind of resilience and facing adversity and the mental part of the game that we're not at the races about. So I think for them, that will have been a real disappointment because even playing into those conditions from like the first clearance kick or one of the really early clearance kicks that just kind of bananaed its way out. they just didn't seem to do it. Watching them before kickoff, all their training was short pick and goes, short pick and go, short pick and go. I was like, well, this is what's going to happen. That's what they did in the first half. So I think as much as we're controlling games out, I think the pressure we're mentally putting on teams with our defensive line, I'm sure we'll talk about the defense later, but we are putting the doubt in teams' minds as well. It's not just kind of the kicking and the strategic stuff. It's who we're bringing on, but the pressure we're putting consistently now throughout an 80 minutes on teams, that means there is no easy moment where they can relax. I mean, we can't relax either. We're only 1 point up. But yeah, I thought it was a really good, really impressive performance in terms of how far we've come. It's not pretty, but it's 4 points. Professional sport is about winning games. However you get there, is you get in there.
I think you're sorry, Dan, go on.
No, it's okay, go on.
I was just going to say something that Simon said about it not being easy for us watching. I think the crowd played a massive part in those last 10, 15 minutes. There was a penalty they were kicking to touch, and Brace pulled them back 3 times to kick on the right mark. And the crowd, every time he tried to take more yards, every time the crowd absolutely went ballistic. And every time Brace pushed them back, and that got in their head. And I think that's the line out you're on about where they've overthrown it. Like that's like you see the players and Van Ziel and stuff like that talk about the difference that the Cardiff Crown can make because of the type of ground that we've got, and those sort of things are where we can help. So those last 10 minutes where they crumbled, the crowd got on them as well. And I think we brought Dan Thomas on, and I think we got a bit more aggressive at the breakdown, which led to Ben Thomas making a tackle and winning the penalty. I think that was his for Johan Lloyd to then score as well. Like it's just accumulation of factors. But yeah, I think it's so positive.
I like the idea that there's an alternate Edinburgh Central Rugby podcast who are sitting there going, "Oh, we'd have won that last season," as they lose again by another couple of points
in another universe.
Simon mentioned the defence there, Tony. It was mentioned as well by Alex Cuthbert in the Scrum 5 podcast on Monday that Gethin Jenkins deserves a lot of credit for the work he's been doing. We did miss quite a few tackles in the first half. There was a couple of soft 22 entries for Edinburgh, but it recovered well in the second half. In how many different ways do you think Gethin Jenkins threatened to kill people at half-time in the change room?
I don't think he did. I think he just stared at people. So looking at I want to give them a shout out because they helped me with some of my tinfoil hat stuff. But Cardiff RFC fans are really good for statistics. I'm just looking at the tackle stats now, and Beetham missed 3 tackles. Johan Lloyd missed a couple. So did Basham and Knott. But yeah, you just imagine there's an evil eye stare from Gethin as he looks around the changing room. That would wither me. I know he coaches, I've seen pictures of him refereeing mini games up at Pontyclun, and I've seen him when my team have played Pontyclun, and just standing on the sideline, and you just think, how are those kids reacting to just Gethin Jenkins just stood on the sideline, and they're like, he's a British and Irish Lion, and they probably don't know who he is, and he's just blowing the whistle and telling them they can't miss tackles like that. So yeah.
As a kid getting back in the car going, "Oh, the ref was a twat," and he's getting.
I think watching the game back. When I was there, I thought we'd been beaten up in that first 40 minutes. Really, missed a lot of tackles. But watching the game back, we missed in the build up to their first try. We missed a tackle on their fullback a couple of times, and I think there was something about if we're kicking, our catching the kicker wasn't as good, especially if we're kicking longer. We were letting them make, so we missed that. But Alex Mann, fantastic tap tackle to kind of bring him down. Otherwise, he's away, and they're scoring basically one phase earlier than they actually did. But in the build up to their scrum half try, I think Sebastian kind of overwraps on a ruck and leaves that gap, and then Adams but before that, their fly half had somehow wriggled out of 2 tackles to make a break, and actually. We were holding them defensively. We made those mistakes that allowed them to get close to the line. And I think that's the difference between Saturday and what we've been doing in previous weeks is we haven't really allowed teams, we've said it before, to piggyback penalty wise or make big breaks to kind of get towards our line until late in the game, when Angus O'Brien made that break for the Dragons. So looking at it, we were holding them relatively comfortably, again, between that halfway line, 10-metre line. They didn't look like they had a lot of ideas, but then they make one break and we're scrambling. I think, a few of their, I'd have to say their first try was lovely. To get the ball, the cross kick was beautifully weighted and caught. And, after 2 minutes, I stood there thinking, oh God, they're not just going to kind of pick and drive. They're actually going to try and, they're going to play it more expensively. So I think looking back on it, it looked worse than maybe it was. The stats maybe show that, we did miss a hatful of tackles, and it certainly felt like we missed more than we'd usually do. But I felt the structure was still there, and almost in the second half, like Connaught did, like the Dragons did, they ran out of ideas because they just couldn't get around it. At some point, a team is going to chip over the top a lot more than they currently do, and look to kick us round the park, because that's how
we dropped two though. So I think we regularly drop Sheedy, and then we had Beetham or Yohan Lloyd. So we've got quite a bit of cover back there. We're just really tight, and sometimes players are just going to break our line. Like we're going to come up against good players who are going to be able to do stuff. The fact that we're able to scramble and still, I think we gave away like 7 penalties on Saturday. I don't know what the split is between attack and defence, but that's a much lower number than we would normally give away. We're normally in the teens, I think, and our defence and discipline has been so much better this year. But we've got to expect that people are going to break our line. Like it's going to happen because we're playing professionals. Not like I'm running up against us.
There was a really impressive moment, I thought, defensively towards the back end of the game where we lost a line out just on the edge of their 22, and they went to swing it properly wide, and the ground that covered by Millard in particular at outside centre, but backed up by Beetham, who was on the wing at that point, and Ben Thomas as well. It was probably a 35 yard sprint in the end on the curve that he did, but they looked to get wide quickly, looked to put us under pressure, and we shut that down so quickly. They end up kicking quite poorly then, only just outside their 22, and although we lose the line out, we still pin them back, which I thought just sort of summarised the effort, but also the connectivity of that defence as well, where everybody comes up as one. There's no, we don't have to see as much from Harry Millard as we did maybe from Ray Lilo in that solo spot blitzing hero stuff, because we're a much more connected defensive line. It doesn't need that individual moment of brilliance to sort us out. So that's very impressive. A couple more 3-word thoughts then on one topic in particular. Steve says, what a kick. Hugh said, Lloyd the boot. Ben said, Lloyd, you beauty. Matthew said, big kick energy, which I like. That was very good. 4D, it was Yohan Lloyd's full debut on Saturday night, starting at fly half. Obviously, the kick was a major part of it, but also, how do you think he did generally in his first out in the 10 jersey for us?
I thought he played quite well. S4C gave him their player of the match. I think it was Basham was the official player of the match, but clearly Ken Owens kind of rated him quite highly. I thought put quite a good few nudges through. I thought he was very good in terms of sweeping up the ball. There was a lot of loose passes and stuff like that with the weather, and such a massive effort with that kick, particularly when it wasn't 100% off the kicking tee. And I think the one thing, like, they did a post-match interview with him as well. You really get the impression he's a Cardiff boy that loves playing for Cardiff, and you kind of saw that in his performance. But yeah, unbelievable kick. I really thought when we won the penalty, I could see Beetham kind of running towards the ball, and I thought Beetham's a logical one to take it. But I wasn't too disappointed. Clearly, Yohan was happy to take it. Sheedy was on the pitch at this point anyway, I believe. And yeah, he backed it up massively. So yeah, hell of a kick.
Obviously, the wind was behind him a bit, but he probably had another 5-10 yards there as well. Like,
easily.
It was a very impressive kick. Yeah, I think the other thing to say is that, and this doesn't prove any sort of argument right or wrong, but obviously a lot of the debate over the summer was Lloyd coming in, De Beer going out, and it was interesting that on the night, Lloyd has his one kick and wins it, and De Beer misses two to win it for the Dragons down at Rodney Parade against Osprey. So obviously, there's a long way to go, and there's much more to it than that. But just on that one head-to-head basis, I think that's what we brought Lloyd in for, is moments like that. And yeah, he certainly lived up to the bill.
It's really strange because the ground kind of went silent. And we went completely silent for the kick. But even when it went over, usually where I'm stood on the south, the north tells you whether it's over or not. And it just went silent. Like everybody was kind of like, well, so how many points is that? Because we haven't done this for a while. So is that a 2 or is it a 1? Or is it, oh, it's a 3, we're ahead. All right, yeah. It was just this this moment of kind of silence before the crowd erupted. Like nobody could quite believe that we'd kicked a penalty, full stop, regardless of where it is.
Yeah, I was going to have a look back at when the last one we properly kicked like that. I didn't have a chance to in the end, but yeah, we certainly don't kick many, as we know from last season. Simon, then another player I wanted to highlight, Kieran Azarati, one of those players who came on and was so important in that late scrum. He's a player who I think a little bit bizarrely, but whenever he's named in a Wales squad, he does seem to attract a bit of, not abuse is the right word, but I think that there's certainly plenty of people that don't believe in Kieran Hazarati as a player in a position where we haven't got much depth in Wales anyway. Is he underrated, do we think, outside of Cardiff?
Well, yeah, I don't think, I think he's probably not rated outside of Cardiff rather than being underrated. I think others, whether it's his shape, he's not particularly tall. He's a large lad, shall we say, to be sensitive. But he makes a huge difference. And I do think now with Sebastian Wainwright, we can rest him. He doesn't have to be flogged every game. He's got good hands as well. There was a little pop pass that Domachowski did that was really close quarters that could easily have been a knock on that he kind of got hold of and made some yards as well. So, yeah, I mean, I think he's had a few tough games internationally as well, where he's been really the screw's been turned on him. That I think is one of the reasons why fans of other clubs maybe don't rate him as highly. But to have him, and whether it's him and Dom starting or coming off the bench, I think is fantastic. They locked the scrum out. They were a key part of that win. It's a big step up from scrummaging at URC level to scrummaging against an international side. So how many caps has he got? 25, 28, 20 odd? Is it as many as that?
Must be around there by now, I would have thought, yeah.
So it's not like he's got a huge experience at international level. So just wish him the best for the next however many weeks, 5-6 weeks, that he can get some game time, and he deserves it. As you say, we're not kind of particularly blessed in that position. If you're not picking him, who do you? It'd be really interesting to see what Tandy does. I guess that's maybe for later in the pod, around how does he use these next 4 games? Does he use them to get a look at everybody in the squad with the first 2 games, and then looks to settle down for the final 2 bigger games? So yeah, we rate him. So that's the most important thing, really, isn't it? And he'll always have that try against the Dragons last season or season before.
My Ginger Club conspiracy theory on likes of Azarati and Carey as well, who also falls into this, is as also a ginger and who had this growing up, you do get redder in the face. You're naturally paler. So when you're exerting the effort, you get redder. And I think Carey always had this. Well, people are like, oh, he's puffing, he's blowing. It's like, no, he's just ginger, mate. That's just how you look when you're doing exercise. Like I was like, nowadays I do puff after 5 minutes, so it's worth it. But when I was younger, I did have a bit of an engine. And people are like, are you all right? I'm like, yeah, I'm absolutely fine. I just look way more knackered than I actually am. I feel like Azza and Carey have that in abundance. So that obviously does put me in line for a Wales call-up, but I'll probably turn it down at this point.
Yeah,
I've got a mate who's gingers.
Talking about how disappointing it is you haven't been capped at any Welsh sport before we started. I think what he does do as well, he does sit down every so often, and gets his boot redone or something like that. I'm sure it's all like a legitimate injury and stuff like that, but at least once a half or twice a half, he will be sat down with physios around him during a key point, and it's kind of like, oh well, yeah, that's fine. Let's buy some time. So yeah, long may it continue.
I got a ginger mate on the point Dan was just making about looking red really early, where if you just rub his face, then he's just got like fingerprints all down his face. So the moment I imagine if it's the same similar for Azarati, so the moment he gets into a scrum and his head rubs against someone else's, immediately one side of his face is red and is the other. So he's on a hide into nothing because if you get up and you look like that and a scrum's gone down, you immediately look guilty as well.
You need your tinfoil hat out, Tony, with that kind of thing. So
it needs a ginger wig on the tinfoil hat. That's what it needs. Tony, then the final player I wanted to highlight, not just for this game, but I think for the block as a whole, Johan Mulder's been excellent on basic scrum half duty, but also in the way that Tinas De Beer did as well in his season playing regularly with us. He loves a turnover, loves to pop up with that. I just think the wider question with him is, and we'll talk about the news to come out the WRU later, but with their plan and with the cutting of teams, there would be fewer non-Welsh qualified players involved, and I think they've been quite clear that they want to reduce that and keep it to more of a marquee level, one or two just coming into squads. With respect to Mulder, I think most people would agree that prior to coming to Cardiff, he wouldn't have been rated in that marquee sort of level. But I think it's also like there'll be people who out there will say, oh, he's blocking somebody like Ellis Bevan or Ian Davis from playing. But he's been so fundamental to how good we've been that the other Welsh players wouldn't be playing at a high level without him. Is that something the WRU really need to consider? That it's not just about big names, it's about how important players actually are to the team?
Yeah, like when Mulder was signing for us, when he signed for us, there was talk that Saracens were sniffing around him, and I imagine when he's coming out of contract, there'll still be a couple of teams sniffing around him because he makes our backline. Like, there's a reason Sheedy has looked as good as he has this year. It's because the pace of the ball he's getting from Mulder has been superb, and the same with Millard and bits and pieces like that. Like, defensively, he's solid. That try he scored on the weekend, like, that's a proper strong man try. I think he carries over two lads
it's the number
as
8
well.
as well.
Like,
It's the Edinburgh number 8.
just such a good finish. And it's we hark back to the glory days of the pro teams, which for us is probably when we won the EDF and the Challenge Cup the first time round. And that's when the Ospreys were as dominant as they were the Galacticos at the time, I guess. Could still couldn't win a European quarterfinal, but it was there was a spine of properly good non-Welsh qualified players. Because what you need people from outside of the Welsh bubble on the field to help with those training techniques, because that's where it comes from. It helps to drive standards up. Yeah, they're paid a bit more money, but they help drive standards up. It's a shame that having non-Welsh qualified people on the board of the WRU doesn't seem to have driven their standards up. But
I think he's been, as you say,
he's been
Tony,
superb.
Yeah, and how he didn't get man of the match on Saturday, because there's the turnover after the scrum half takes a quick tap. I think tried to try and get momentum back into the game. Beetham brings him down, and Mulder's straight over him. Turns out, and those kind of moments that just it just killed their momentum. If you come and there was another one in the first half, I think, over in the in the far corner where he's so quick and strong over the ball. And as you say, Tony, the finish. I was there thinking, oh, you need to pass that back to Basham. What have you done? And then he's kind of bounced the number 8 and just. I thought he looked a bit clumsy. I was like, oh, is he grounded? But when you see the replay, he's comfortably scored it. But I think it's not just Mulder. I mean, we talk about McNally a lot, and we have talked about McNally a lot. I think the speed in which he has gone from being being brought in as a kind of experienced head, we'll have him every game, but coming towards the end of a career, to being a complete leader of that team. His interview after the game just showed how much I think he seems to be really enjoying the leadership role that he's been given, and it takes the pressure. Yeah, McNally. Yeah, and it takes the pressure off some of the other senior Welsh internationals. Going, you don't have to worry about this. I'll lead the side. He's just been excellent. I mean, counter-wrecking, turning ball over, just being a pest. But you can see what he brings to the group. And I think you lose those players. We've said it before, haven't we? You lose that level of experience and reliability at your peril.
I think McNally was quoted as saying that coming to Cardiff reinvigorated his love for rugby.
Yeah.
I'm sure I read that last year. On Mulder, from the non-Welsh qualified perspective, it's not as if he came here as a shoe-in for first choice. It was the same time we signed Aled Davis. We still had Bevan in place. He started the season as third choice. He forced his way into the team with performance. So if you want a non-Welsh qualified player to come in, you want him. You still give the Welsh lads the chance. Those Welsh lads didn't perform to the level that we needed them to, and Mulder came in and made that shirt his own, and that's what you want. So and that raises everyone's standards. There's a reason we're saying that Aled Davis has come on and kicked as well as he had towards the end, because he knows he's only going to get 10, 15 minutes here and there, or the odd game here and there, like he did against the Dragons. He needs to impress and he needs to keep going. And that's probably why we've moved Bevan on for a month, so he can get game time in the Premiership Cup and stuff like that. But Mulder is one of the best signings we've made over the last few years, alongside McNally.
Good stuff. I think that just about covers Saturday night's first team game. We'll move on to a bit of news now, some player news over the last week or so. Firstly, we mentioned Cam Winnett got injured on last week's pod. It's now been confirmed there's a groin injury that will keep him out for 5 to 6 weeks, which means he won't play any part in the autumn internationals, and he's very much touch and go whether he'll be back for that Zebra away game. So we'll hopefully get a bit of update on that closer to the time. As we mentioned, Talupe Faletau has been ruled out of the autumn internationals with the knee injury picked up in the opening few minutes of Saturday night's game. Ollie Cracknell's been called in as his replacement, and I said we've spoken about Alan Lawrence quite a bit on the pod over the last few weeks, and I think the general agreement was that he maybe wouldn't have got in the initial squad, but he can probably be desperately unlucky to not make it as the replacement there for Faletau, although we continue to have a lot of good depth there. I think the likes of Ross Moriarty and Tame Basham would also be in that unlucky category. Will Rigg has been recalled by Exeter after a huge 0 appearances in all competitions for Cardiff. Begs the question, what was the point a little bit? I don't know whether it was us saying sending him back, whether they did ask for him back, but I'm sure he was excellent in training anyway, so it all makes it worthwhile. And then the final piece of news, as Tony just alluded to there, it was announced today as we're recording the pod that Ellis Bevan has gone on loan to Bristol for 4 weeks. That'll cover their Premiership Cup group stage games which go on during the autumn internationals. He'll be available for the first round of that this Friday as Bristol host Bath again at Ashton Gate, so good chance for him to get some minutes under his belt, as Bristol's injury crisis is, I mean, you couldn't even make up their injury crisis, such the amount of players that they've got out at the moment. That's it for player news. Obviously the big news of the last week, though, something we'll get into discussing properly now. The Welsh Rugby Union announced on Friday, after 24 hours of all sorts of rumours going around that proved not quite accurate, that they had unanimously agreed at board level to go down to 3 clubs. Their exact wording is that they will be issuing 3 licenses for men's club. One of those will be in the capital, one of those will be in the east, and one of those will be in the west, although they're open still to what the branding of those clubs will be. They say that each of the 3 clubs will have equal funding, starting at £6.4 million a year and rising to £7.8 million in an unspecified time frame that could be from anywhere from 1 to 50 years, I assume. They also list a number of areas which will receive investment, including improved coaching and education, a men's national academy with 2 regional training centres, 12 men's development centres, a women's national academy, 3 women's professional player development centres and 9 satellite locations, additional investment in the Super Rugby Cymru and Celtic Challenge competitions, and creating a talent and insight management department to manage talent ID, recruitment, retention and development in both the men's and the women's game. I think they also mentioned, which I hadn't noted down but I've just thought of, that there will be 2 women's professional teams that will play in that Celtic Challenge. But they haven't really said if they'll be attached to the men's clubs or where they'll be. In response, Cardiff put out a statement which was very well received on social media. Everybody really enjoyed it, and there was no harsh comments back at all. They put out a statement saying that the club, including player, coaching, and staff representation, have met with the WRU on Friday morning. The WRU set out their plans, and we have been assured that one of the three teams will be in Cardiff. We are relieved and encouraged by this. As a club, we are confident in our position and viability, and our sole focus remains steadfast on ensuring Cardiff Rugby remains at the Arms Park as Cardiff Rugby. This will be reiterated with absolute confidence and clarity on our follow-up meeting with the Welsh Rugby Union. And going on to say that we look forward to exploring the wider detail and working collaboratively to help shape the future of professional rugby in Wales as we approach our 150th anniversary season. So, from a Cardiff perspective, I think despite what you may read on social media and hear in other fan related media, there's no definitive safety for Cardiff Rugby there. There is definitive safety for rugby in Cardiff, which I think is a crucial difference that people often miss. But Fordy, coming to you first, just from a Cardiff fan perspective, how are we feeling about all the announcements that came out on Friday?
I think there's an element of relief that we've at least got a team to support for the next 2 seasons. I wasn't sure what was going to happen, so there's an element of relief there. But again, when it kind of comes to the WRU, there's a lot of worry about what a team in Cardiff entails. And yeah, I just think it would be a disaster if it's a new kind of artificial team. And likewise for the team that's in the West and the team that's in the East, I think these new artificial teams would lose far more supporters than it could possibly gain. And I think particularly the brand we've developed, particularly in the last few years with like the attendances we've had, and this future team that's in Cardiff, there's quite a risk of with Cardiff Athletic Club that team might not play at the Arms Park then, which would just be a whole disaster going forward. I'm not sure what kind of viable team they could artificially create from that if that's the case. So hopeful that it kind of remains as Cardiff Rugby going forward.
Simon, what did you make of it?
Well, we know that the WRU don't really care about the fans. They don't care if no one turns up, because it's about they care if people don't turn up to watch Wales, because that's the moneymaker. So, as Fordy said, you end up with somebody getting the license, and we end up playing in Leckwith, but not at the City Stadium, at the athletics track in the middle. And it's just it's a side in the capital city, but it's not of the capital city. It's not of Cardiff. It's imposed on the city. Logic would say that they would look to continue what's happening now and invest now. We've got to be sold first, and that's another worry: is who ends up buying us out from the WRU, because the WRU, I'm sure, will want ownership that is sympathetic to its very I can't think of the right word. I mean, wanting complete
democratic.
Yeah, wanting complete control of all rugby decisions, but actually then you take on the commercial risk of everything else. Thank you very much. It's not attractive to any investor that wants to kind of grow a brand, because they have no control over the main thing that will grow that brand, which is the performances and the players that you have. So it's a decision which they don't always come to, but it doesn't create any certainty, I think, for anybody. As Fordy says, somebody could come in and win that bid for the franchise, whatever. Well, I don't know what they're calling them, and base it wherever they want within the limits of the city. So yeah, it just feels like it feels like a decision that hasn't created certainty in any way, shape, or form. I still think the proposal around the structure of all the rugby decisions being made by the WRU is not in any club's best interest. The positivity about the investment in the women's game, the professionalisation of that, I think is really welcome and good to see. It shouldn't be a either or in terms of the men or the women's game. It should be kind of as equally funded as possible. And if those can be linked to whatever, if if those clubs want to be linked to whatever the current the final three teams are, then that maybe creates a groundswell of support for both the men and the women's game. But yeah, at the moment, I just want to enjoy the rest of the season, and whatever next season comes, it's kind of like, well, actually, the union are going to do what the union will do, and we'll either be here or we won't be here, and there we go. I just think we've been playing so well. I just kind of shoved it to the back of my mind and go, okay, fine, I'll just do what they do. But we the best thing we can do is get 20 points out of 25, is go into the next block and attack that next block, and keep winning those games, because that's what we all want to see.
Tony, your thoughts?
The statement very much read to me is, please come and keep watching us, especially with it being announced with the statement the day before. It also was, we're still viable, please buy us. That's very much how that statement read to me. It was, we'll still be here, you can still spend money with us and on us. The WRU statement, it's them kicking the can down the road because they can't make a decision. They obviously wanted 2. All the feedback they've got is 2 won't work, and they've gone, oh, well, we can't stay with 4 because that makes us look really weak. So let's go to 3. But what we'll do is we'll try and wait as long as possible so someone folds, it takes the decision away from us, or someone buys someone else and merges. They have completely abdicated their responsibility of the Welsh game. The money that's being talked about from the squad perspective is not even in line with what Glasgow were spending when they won the league. So if people are thinking this is a silver bullet to get successful teams in Wales, like, it's a joke. Like, there's no way in the world that we'll be anything different than what we are now, with teams punching above our weight like we are currently doing, and the Scarlets and the Ospreys have been. But more often than not, we're going to get teams like the Dragons be down the end of it, because the Dragons are the only ones who are spending, their books are in the black. And that's because they're not spending money on the field on quality players, which is why they have all our offloads, essentially. That's why we were jokingly referring to them as the Ragsons. That's the future of Welsh rugby on the field if these proposals go through. And Dave Redding and Collier Keywood saying, I enjoy going to work, as he's announcing that hundreds of people are going to lose their job. What an absolute melon. And Redding, the statements like, we don't care about the history, we don't care who beat the All Blacks 40 years ago. Like, that to me shows that he has no, like someone was saying, he has no feeling for anything outside of, oh, these are players, these are my commodity, let's do that. Because how you get people to go and watch this is through the history. I watch Cardiff because I went down with my dad, and that's where my history comes from. People go and watch Scarlets because they went with their parents who were there, or their grandparents. Like, it's, and the same with, like, to an extent with the Ospreys and the Dragons. Like, it's just, it's so demoralizing hearing a governing body talk in such whimsical terms of people losing their jobs.
I think it's also, and I'm not best placed to comment on this, but it feels like kind of pure elite performance thinking for the Wales team. We need to reduce the numbers, increase competition within those numbers, hothouse those players, own those players' development, make sure that everything is lined up so that, hopefully the 2 or 3 sides will be competitive. But if they're not, and Wales is competitive, we've succeeded. And I think by thinking that way, what you don't think about is the context in which the sport plays in communities and within Wales as a whole. We've already gone through. We're still fighting over the original move from the into the professional era. You can't just go. Well, you can, but you won't be taken seriously if you go. Actually, forget all that. Why is everybody getting? People follow players now, don't they? They don't follow teams, and it's just such nonsense thinking. But it's kind of bloodless in terms of it. It's just thinking about the elite performance pathway and how do we get the best out of that without thinking of where that sits in the context of somebody seeing somebody like them playing professional rugby, being picked for Wales, rather than not seeing these players because they're in academy setups, so you don't see them until they are ready. It feels developed by an organisation and people that don't have a feel for the cultural position of the game in Wales, and that's why whatever happens, it's likely to come unstuck.
Fordy, in the plans, is there anything in the WRU direction of travel that sort of does make sense? I'm not too sure if they know what they announced in the end, because I know a couple of the journalists there were sort of still seeking clarification after a press conference that lasted at least an hour of the WRU talking. But are they onto anything in what they're trying to do, or does it feel like they're just sort of making it up on a whim as consultations come and go?
I guess like a positive would be the kind of direction they're going with the women's game, considering kind of the state it is in Wales. But yeah, on the whole, I don't think there's a huge amount I'm particularly positive about. And I think that just winds me up about it all is the constant kind of flip-flopping and change their decisions. Tony touched on it. I think they're almost just trying to save face in a way with where they've gone. Like, especially this time last year, they're like adamant 4 teams is the direction. Then in the summer going, a team will be cut. And then ideal outcome is 2 teams. And then now it's 4 teams for now, but 3 teams down the road. I think a lot changes in kind of WRU HQ almost on a weekly basis. I think there's going to be a lot more to what they're saying. A lot's going to change over the next few years. And yeah, I don't think it's plain sailing their ideas anyway, but I don't think it's going to be a kind of plain sailing journey to this destination that is their kind of ideal outcome.
I mean, I don't know whether I read this right, but isn't one of the reasons why we've got 4 for another 2 years is the URC wouldn't let them go down to 3?
It was in the initial Wales Online thing that that it was going to be for 2 years because the South Africans had blocked it going down. But then Richard Collier-Keywood then suggested that it would be as soon as possible. So it might not be 2 years. It might ideally, I think he said it would be as soon as next season, which just another thing in the spanner in the works of the WRU not really sure what they're announcing themselves, let alone telling us about it. So.
It's just that kind of sums it up, really, doesn't it? Well, we want to do this. Well, have you spoken to anyone else in the league that we play in to see if we can do that? Oh, right. No, well, I'm sure it'd be fine. Don't worry. Because, that opens up who takes that other role? Because I think there was something in the Wales Online that I think the league was keen to have an American side in. South Africa were kind of like, no, we're not keen to have, because they obviously joined this league so that their time zones match as well. So going to play kind of in Boston, or I'm assuming it would be that way, or Miami or something. It's
the LA in the WRU.
Yeah,
it is bizarre that you say, have you asked the league that we play in? It's also the league that they're the shareholder of. Yeah. Like it's literally the board that they sit on, and they could ask at any moment, and they probably hadn't thought to. Simon, obviously we've spoken a bit about sort of soulless entities and clubs being placed on Cardiff rather than it being Cardiff Rugby. There's also a scenario, judging from what the WRU said about their plan to have sort of private investors take on the commercial risk, but then the WRU basically retain full control of the rugby department, that it is still Cardiff Rugby, and they build on that brand, but would they get in an owner who is happy to do that and take on the commercial risk and leave the WRU to run the rugby department and sort of treat it as almost WRU A, B, and C with the other three teams just under the national team? Is that something that we'd be interested in supporting? Would that not feel like Cardiff Rugby, even though the branding retains Cardiff Rugby in it?
I mean, I'd question any ownership that came in on that deal in terms of their motivation, particularly with the Arms Park as an asset as well. I mean, I don't trust ownership generally. They've really got to work hard to prove, what they say. So, but I would really be concerned about any ownership that would sign up to those terms. I'm not commercially minded, but I can't see how it would make commercial sense, because you can't make money or even break even just solely on the commercial side of the business. Whereas it would have to be a fan putting their hands in their pocket, really. I mean, there's no money in rugby anywhere. You don't make money. You don't make money really in football. But it's not. I can't see how it's an attractive deal. I can't see how anybody goes, yep, that's the one for me. I'll just have be ordering the squash and the barrels of Guinness, and don't worry about anything that happens on the pitch. You take all of that. It's such a weird, unattractive offer for anybody that I can't see how someone will come out somewhere to do it. But then I just question, what are they really in it for if they're doing that? Unless it is like a long-term support of Martin Ryan type that you can see as the interest of the club. If it's someone else, I'd worry, because they can just uproot at any point and go, actually, there's no tie to what's happening on the pitch. It's solely the commercial benefit. And I think for a club like Cardiff, the sole commercial benefit is a real worry in terms of what happens to the Arms Park. I know there are, we're tenants there, but if we want to redevelop that, and it needs to be redeveloped, lovely as it is, and rocking as it was on Saturday night, I can't see it, but someone will, because someone will always see an opportunity.
That's before even getting to the rugby element of it, which, I mean, it's difficult. I'm not sure how they're expecting to retain supporters if the club is there purely to support the national team rather than compete itself. There's scenarios where if the WRU basically run the rugby departments of all three of the remaining clubs, if your club was doing very well, Cardiff are playing well, and say Callum Sheedy's looking in great form and Johan Lloyd's looking in great form, they could just pluck one of them out and say, actually, now you're playing for whoever the East team are, the Dragons, you assume, or the West team, whichever, Scarlets or Ospreys or Merger or whatever ends up down there. That's not conducive to watching your club winning. That's just conducive to how can the Welsh team survive. And I don't think many hardcore Cardiff fans are in it for the Welsh team. Essentially, they want to see Cardiff do well, and that's sort of the be all and end all.
But I think also that comes back to Tony's point about Mulder. This idea that if you've got two top-level back rows that are both Welsh qualified, one should move to another professional side to have game time, rather than those two players spurring each other on within the squad to improve. Players at an elite level need competition. You read any of rugby or football players' books, most of them will go, I needed so-and-so to drive me on. I wanted to be better than, Sam Warburton saying he wanted to be better than Martin Williams. That changing of that generational shift, that was where he wanted to get to, and learned a lot off him. It's just, I can't see the sense in this desire, and it comes so often from outside, maybe people who don't support one of the professional sides, to go, well, why have Cardiff got Basham and Mann and I don't think anyone would say and Dan Thomas, but that kind of like, why have they got all those players when we had loads of back rows? Well, because they drive each other on, and rugby's an attritional sport, and you get injured, and it's about the collective, not about the individual. We'll end up with paper thin 15s because we're trying to move players.
That's what 7.4 million screams to me is, well, we'll just have lads who are in academy or just out of academy and some like good pro sort of players, but then anyone actually good will just disappear over the bridge or to Scotland or Ireland or whatever. And then WRU will go, well, we're not paying them. Happy days. Don't have to spend so much money. More money on the gravy. Do I need to get the hat out?
But that's the thing, is I think people rightly point out with the paper thin squads and the not enough money, is that it feels much more like the next move would be to 2 after you go to 3 than it would be to 3 competitive teams and then maybe a return to 4, whatever. That if you had to bet on which way it would go, I think most people would put money on it going further cuts rather than it going upwards in world rankings and competitiveness. Simon mentioned there, Tony, about which owners would come in. We had a couple of questions linked to that. These 2 questions, I feel like, are sort of linked, even if the first one doesn't expressly mention one of the companies. But David says, do we think the WRU are going to sell us to the least suitable party in order to keep their clause in? And Simon says, how ridiculous would a Y11 purchase / merger be? That seems to be the rumour at the moment. That there was something I think Collier Keywood said on Friday about when talking about how you lose a club, and he sort of alluded to whether one of the current owners would buy one of the other teams and it would go that way, which I think 2 + 2 = 5, but that would be Y11 buying Cardiff, as we know they were in when Helford were trying to buy us as well. Is there any part of you that thinks Y11 coming in would be good or successful or worth it for us or the Ospreys?
The only time I hear about Y11 is when they are trying to merge with another club. So we've had the Osprey Scarlets merger, which almost happened to the point where the players were told, and then it was called off because the Scarlets board pulled out. There's been Cardiff Ospreys mergers a couple of times. Ospreys Ealing at one point, wasn't there? And then Ospreys London Irish or London Welsh at one point. Wasn't that a conversation at one point? I swear I remember that. But it's pretty much the only time Y11 come up is when they're trying to shift the Ospreys on or buy someone else alongside. Like I'd have no confidence whatsoever that they would have any best interests about the club at all. I don't know them, but going from the only bit of news that I ever hear about them is so and so is going to merge with the Ospreys. That doesn't fill me with confidence.
Yeah, and let's be fair, like, not coming across as like big-headed Cardiff in this statement, but if they were to buy Cardiff, it wouldn't be a merger. I mean, Ospreys would just be assumed by Cardiff, essentially. It would still be Cardiff. And what they would do there is completely sell the Ospreys down the river, sell their fans, sell their staff down the river. That would be the end of them. What's to say then if then we do end up going from 3 to 2 teams, that they wouldn't just do exactly the same to us then in a couple of years and look to buy Scarlets or invest in somebody else? So yeah, I don't think Y11 would be top of that.
If I'm them, I would. It makes more sense for them to try and buy / merge with the Scarlets for me, but I don't know why. It just feels like a better option for them.
At least,
but again,
option.
Well, the least worst option, yeah, you're right. But again, it's the same thing. It's more selling fans down the river and going from there. I guess the question around Y11 is, and the Ospreys, I guess, is what happens with St Helens now? Do the council continue to, because the council are helping fund some of the redevelopment, is that right?
Council are basically paying for it, I think.
Okay. So do they continue to do that now that there's so much uncertainty around which one of the West teams can will survive in 2 years, or are they going to have is Swansea essentially going to have a brand new redeveloped professional stadium and play in the SRC? Although Cuthbert did, I think it was Cuthbert or Bywater on the Scrum 5 pod, did make a reference that the Ospreys or the Scarlets could feasibly apply for the East license, which would be hilarious if it was Cardiff in the capital city, Ospreys in the East, but still playing at Swansea, and then Scarlets down west. That would amuse me, but yeah.
It'd be amazing if we went back to like Newport Gwent Dragons and Neath Swansea Ospreys. And
I mean,
can you imagine that? That's the franchises they give out. Back to the Future, the history.
They haven't mentioned any names, right? And like, well, if what Reading is, so there's been lots of talk about Reading wanting clubs based in the cities. So maybe it is Swansea, maybe it is Cardiff, maybe it is Newport, and Newport and the Dragons have to get back into bed because obviously there's been a lot of water under the bridge there. Like there's so much uncertainty around everything that the WRU have announced.
I think as a side point, if I was a Dragons person, I might be campaigning to go back to Newport and see it as a fresh start, to be honest, and rebrand as Newport and go from there. I know the Dragons guys were talking about how intrinsically linked failure and the Dragons branding are at this point, so it might be a good chance for a fresh start, but that's for them to discuss anyway. Fordy, linked to what supporters can do and possible ownership and stuff, Liam sent in a thought that he thinks it's vital to discuss and make clear that even though we may have little impact as supporters, we should push the ownership group of Martin Wyatt, Ryan and the Hollywood Chaps, which I feel like is a good band name for them as well if they did Martin Ryan and the Hollywood Chaps. And not just because we don't want Y11, but because that's what is best for the club. I guess my question to you on the back of that then is, as supporters, should we be prepared to sort of properly get involved in this, either campaigning for a specific ownership group as and when they all become clear who they are, or even if it was to be Y11 and WRU taking on the rugby department stuff, should we be prepared to go to drastic levels and sort of not turn up for games and make our voices heard that way?
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with Liam of getting behind Martin Ryan's team, or Chaps even. And I think, yeah, there's definitely certainly an impact we can have. I think considering all the games this season have been Saturday night kickoffs, the attendances have been pretty decent, all things considered. And there's certainly value in kind of using our presence to kind of make our views clear. And I think there's an element of it from like a Cardiff perspective. I think there needs to almost be a campaign next year of it being the 150th anniversary of almost kind of trying to solidify that kind of Cardiff brand and kind of a big PR effort into why people go and support Cardiff. And I do notice on like TikTok, they've got they tend to like post interviews of fans being interviewed, particularly like kids pre-game. I think that has a huge impact of getting around on social media, of showing like how these younger generations, and there's plenty of other people who've been going to watch Cardiff games for years, of how much it means to them, and especially it's even sweeter when it's on the back of a win. So I think just kind of going hard on stuff like that, and then certainly in terms of making our voices clear on what sort of owners we want, especially after the last lot that were around.
I think the other thing I'd add, sorry, just to say the other thing I'd add to that is that when you're considering renewing your season ticket next season, as supporters listening, I think this is the time to become a member of the Cardiff Athletic Club, the rugby section. Obviously a lot of people maybe not hugely aware of what they do, or they're not too interested in the political side and stuff, which is absolutely fair enough. But the Athletic Club, although they're no longer like heritage shareholders or anything like that, they're going to have a massive say in terms of if the new ownership group come in and Cardiff Athletic Club say, and obviously that's then us as members, as supporters, we sort of say, we don't want you, we're going to refuse to extend any lease to you, you're not going to be able to play at the Arms Park. I just think that makes any Cardiff side completely non-viable from the get-go, because you've got no access to sort of 7-day a week income, you've got very little hospitality. The other options you've got within Cardiff, Simon we mentioned in earlier, but like realistically it's then Cardiff City Stadium or nothing. And we know that the deal from the last time we went to Cardiff City Stadium wasn't great commercially for the rugby club. I suspect it'd be even worse now, because I can't imagine Vincent Tan's going to be giving away any slices of any pies down there. They haven't got many pies to go around anyway. And then we also know that, even when it was Cardiff playing down there wasn't much uptake from supporters. They're not keen on trekking all the way down to Leckwith, no matter whether you think it is all the way or if it's actually quite close, but it's certainly not bang in the centre of town as the Arms Park is. So I think becoming a member of the Athletic Club, bolstering the rugby section there and making it clear that we will only be issuing further leases to ownership club groups that we want to see as owning Cardiff Rugby, and not the WRU in disguise or Y11 trying to make a quick buck out of it or whatever their plan is. I think that's going to be super, super important. Tony, you were going to say, sorry.
Just to follow on your point there, also, you would presume that Y11 come in mainly because they want to work to redevelop the ground, and so do some of the others. It was interesting. I think Steve mentioned on the pod about how the Hollywood chaps are the only ones who didn't specifically talk about the redevelopment. They seem to want to invest and build from there and then work on that further down. You do wonder whether the WRU want to get our stadium done quickly, because then that helps to fill Glanmore's gap, which increases the size of the Millennium Stadium and refreshes that. But a boycott of games wouldn't work for me, because it's so important that we show the players that we're still fully behind them. But doing protests like the Dragons had before the Ospreys game, that sort of thing is still something that we should be looking at, regardless of what happens ownership wise for us. Like, we should still be having. I think there were banners this time last year before, the Save Our Game and things like that. Getting those out before every game, having them in the North Terrace, gives them a snack. But they can hold it up and it's on camera then, rather than in the South and it a bit more hidden. So,
my final question then, just on this one, Simon, is what do we want to see from Cardiff now in the sort of short term? Is there, we haven't heard much from like Stuart Waddington, for example, as the chairman. I don't really know what the state of play of like board of directors is and stuff. Is that something we'd like to see a bit of movement on, the club sort of acting as if it's ready to remain rather than just surviving?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult for everyone involved, isn't it? Because there's so much uncertainty. Okay, we've got an independent chair. I don't know what the board. I don't think there's a huge number of board members or anything like that at the moment. So it all feels like it's all up in the air until a decision's made about the ownership and who they're going to be sold to. I just think the best thing that we can do is, one, as Tony said, make our voices heard as regularly as we can. I think the response to the union's consultation, I think, has stopped the optimal model of two teams. I think that has the 7,000 people that wrote in and went no has led to them going, and fair play, it's a consultation and they have responded to the consultation. It might still be a bit of a mess, but I think that collective voice works. So I think we need to do that. But for me, for the next rest of the season, and if we're still here next season, it is just, as Tony said, it's getting behind the team. If we can put results together, if we can keep winning, if we can, I jokingly said that we've got 9th sewn up already this season, because apparently, and as Tony stats on the group chat revealed, we have had an easier start to the season. I don't believe we have, but stats do lie sometimes. So yeah, it's just to get behind them and keep going and make it a very difficult and unpleasant decision to take rugby out of. We're basically what we're saying is take rugby out of the Arms Park. So, as I've said consistently, whatever happens in the background, my mindset is just to enjoy this season. Just to enjoy this season, make our voices heard when we need to make them heard through, this podcast, the rest of the Rap family at games, and try to make that decision as difficult as possible when it needs to be made.
I think Waddington was at the Rags game, by the way. I think he was stood with Martin Ryan and the guy from Pontypool who was writing the match report that I was chatting to towards the end of the game. Someone told me it was him, but I didn't clock him. So
that'd be good. A good spotted on the terrace. That'd be Tony TMZ.
Martin Ryan was there. We must think I'm following him, because I saw him at the Connaught game as well before he ran away from the fart bomb. That wasn't me. It was some kids.
Right. I think we've covered the political stuff there for now. I formulated a short plan, and this might be their first they're hearing of it, depending on when I get round to messaging them. But I'm going to ask like Lynn and David Allen and stuff to come on the pod during the autumn internationals, and we'll cover that in some depth then. But yeah, we'll hopefully there won't be any shock announcements in the next few weeks at least, and we'll have some time to stew on what they announced on Friday before they get round to whatever's going to happen next with these licenses in inverted commas. At this point of the pod, if you're enjoying what you're listening to, please feel free to like and subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're on. Leave us a review and a comment as well. We'll pick them up. If you're watching on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to the Rap channel and to the Global Gainline channel as well, where there's all sorts of stuff going out, especially with the Autumn Internationals coming back over the next few weeks. Quick Rags Corner then. The first game of the doubleheader on Saturday, Cardiff beat Pontypool 31-3. It was a tense first half with only a Kieran Meek penalty for the away side and an Alan Rees unconverted try, making it 5-3 to the home side at the break. But Fishy's men cut loose a bit in the second half. I don't like to mention it again necessarily, but playing downhill with the wind behind you, it definitely makes a difference in the second half. There was scores from Tom Cottle, Joe Goodchild, Ben Fry and Gavin Parry, as well as 6 Lloyd Lucas points. To secure a second super duper bonus point win in the SRC on the bounce, puts Cardiff up to 4th now after a slightly slower start to the season. Tony, what were your thoughts on the game on Saturday, the curtain raiser?
We were really good in the first like 20-30 minutes. Like we butchered a few chances, I thought, but we could have had the game put to bed by half time. But then the second half, like you said, we cut loose. That good child try. If you can go and find it, because it's such a brilliant finish. It had shades of Blaine Scully from a couple of years ago against the Scarlets but in the opposite corner. To the point where the conversion, I've got a photo of it. The conversion was taken with the tee actually touching the touchline because it was that far in the corner. It was a really. We've got a game on the weekend against Llandudno at home, but it's been a really good finish, I guess. That like we didn't start. We beat RGC, but we didn't play well by all accounts, and then we lost to Carmarthen and Ebu, and then Ebu was called off, and then we've won the last two, is it? Or
yeah, beat Aberavon and then Pontypool.
Yeah, and that sort of week break we had, the team looks completely different in the last 2 games than it did in the first couple from the highlights and the bits and pieces that I watched. So, and obviously the Carmarthen game. So hopefully we can push on now, finish in the playoff places and try and win a title from not being top.
Oh, I mean, technically, every place is a playoff place in the SRC because everybody.
Oh yes, of course it is. Of course it is.
But
you actually get a title for finishing top now, though.
You do.
They've changed it.
You want to finish in the top 6, I think it is, so you don't have to play in that first wildcard round. But just from my point of view, I rocked up at about half time for the Rags game, and I was massively impressed in the second half with Lloyd Lucas. It was the first time I've seen him play at fly half since the Carmarthen game that was on telly, and I thought he not struggled a bit, but he looked like he was still adapting to that level in his first proper season. He played a couple of games to the back end of last season when he was still under 18. But in that second half on Saturday, he looked like a guy who'd been playing at that level for a lot longer than a couple of months. He properly controlled things, putting guys into space. He played with the same sort of swagger that we saw when he was at Glantaf in the college league last couple of seasons, and wouldn't be a massive surprise if he was involved in Wales under-20 stuff after Christmas.
I think it helped. We had a decent performance up front, and the first couple of games, like against Carmarthen, we got blown away. He looks a lot better, but as most tenders do, behind a good pack. So let's hope that continues.
Definitely, and as Tony mentioned, the Rags finished their fixture block against Llandudno on Saturday, 2:30 kickoff at the Arms Park. If they can get another win there, it puts them right back in contention for going top when that a game in hand against Ebu Vale comes around that was called off at home a couple of weeks ago. The only other thing to mention quickly from a pathway point of view is to note Joseph Jones, academy winger who played for Merthyr, has been playing up there for the last couple of weeks. They played Brecon in a cup match on Saturday, and he scored 7 tries in a 78-7 victory over Chris Dacey's Brecon. I think he's the head coach up there now. 6 of those tries came in the second half, so I don't know whether the Wern has a similar slope down towards the clubhouse aspect going on there, but not too sure. Some of the teams didn't quite take the cup too seriously, I know, on the weekend, but you can only play what's in front of you, and he scored a couple of tries in the other weeks as well. So good to see him doing well. Right, we'll finish the last couple of bits of the pod. Firstly, just having a look back on the first block as a whole. Obviously, a couple of weeks off now for the first team with the autumn internationals coming round. So Cardiff finish played 5-1 for lost 1 with 4 bonus points in that. 20 points out of a possible 25 to sit 4th in the URC at the break. On our or the guy off Reddit, Tony, who does the year-on-year calculation, we're 5 points ahead of where we were from the respective games last year, which doesn't quite take into account the home and away thing, but it's still as good a comparison as we're going to get. With a note from Sid Judd on Twitter, who I think the actual Cardiff player Sid Judd, who played in the 50s, died a long time ago, so I assume it's not him. It might be his actual name, I don't know, or just a homage to the great Sid Judd. But he said, excellent first block, rode our luck at times, but have come through it. Fordy, coming to you first, what's your sort of general overview of that first block from a Cardiff perspective?
Yeah, overall, very happy. Great to get the home wins, great to get the derby win, and great to push Munster a little bit away. The game Saturday was actually the first game I'd gone to watch this season, so it's nice to know that I'm not a jinx because we actually won a game that I was at. But yeah, very happy. There's definitely an element of expectation to get those results, though. So certainly successful, but almost an element of relief. Very good start to the season.
Simon, your first block review?
Yeah, agree with that. I think we left a bonus point out there against Edinburgh. I think there was that second half when Josh Adams knocked on over the line, but was unfortunate to knock on over the line. I just felt at that point there was a couple of moments in that second half where we really had momentum and then conceded a penalty or just didn't quite get there. I think the 2 points out in Munster I was delighted with in the end. We were chasing that game. Did we really feel we could have won it? Probably not, but actually to get 2 bonus points is fantastic. So I don't think there's much more we could have done. As I say, I think getting the bonus point on Saturday would have been really, I think that's the one that I just feel we were in control in that second half and just couldn't quite. There were periods where we were kind of battering at their line and then we just get a concede a penalty or something like that. So yeah, I can't remember when Cardiff have started a season this well going into an international break. We've put some Edinburgh and Connaught sides we've struggled against. We always, the Dragons away is never a nice game. Munster, we've, taken some hammerings out there. The Lions first up, you don't know what they're going to bring, but they're going to be tough and direct, and we handled it all and got out with the win. So yeah, I can't think of much more we could want out of that block. It's just unfortunate now it ends because that momentum stopped now for however many weeks, and then we come back in without the 9 Welsh internationals away against Zebra in a few weeks' time.
Tony Fordy mentioned there about expectation. I think it's been a little barb chucked at us from the other Welsh teams who are propping up the table that we have had slightly easier fixtures, particularly with Ospreys and Scarlets having to go to South Africa. You've put together your strength of schedule spreadsheet.
Not me.
I
pinched it from Reddit. It was on the Rugby Union subreddit, which is where I get a lot of my stats from, or the Cardiff RFC fans site.
What does that say? And is it fair to say that we haven't played too many of the top teams yet?
It seemed to suggest that we had a weaker start to the season, and then we finished with a stronger end to it. I guess part of that is weighted by the fact I think a lot of our home games are. So what we've played 4 home games and
3.
Oh, is it 3? Oh yeah, of course it is.
Dragons isn't home yet.
Well, I mean, we win there so often; it's basically our house. So I guess that plays into it, the home fixtures. But you can, like you've mentioned earlier about the Merthyr and teams, what teams were being put out in front of the cup. You can only beat what's put in front of you. And we beat Connacht, which we wouldn't have done a couple of years ago. We beat Edinburgh, which we wouldn't have done a couple of years ago. We got 2 bonus points out in Munster in a game that I think when we talked about it, we said they would have won going away. It might well be that we've had a bit of an easier block, and yeah, maybe going to South Africa would have been a lot different. But the type of rugby that we play, I would have backed us to get at least bonus points out in South Africa. And that's really all. Like any time of the season you go to South Africa, essentially you're coming away from it thinking, well, if we can pick up some bonus points, we're all right. Because it's such a pain to go out there, especially with the fact that there's no crowds in those massive stadiums. Like that must play into it. But yeah, like we have the points. I'd rather have the points than not have the points.
Yeah, so it reminds me a bit of, we're sort of maybe turning into the Ospreys under Toby Booth a couple of years ago, where they sort of rode the momentum wave of picking up a few results and the whole finding a way thing, which links in a bit with how we've actually won our games as well the last few weeks. And having that, yeah, obviously it's a bit of a killer now with the Autumn International stopping it, but you'd like to think that even though you might have to rebuild the momentum, I think just the feeling of knowing you can win, like, you know, that's what the whole thing with Wales in that losing streak was, that we'd forgotten how to win, basically, wasn't it? Whereas this Cardiff team, you look at that second half against Edinburgh, and you just thought, yeah, I feel like they're just working out how they're going to win rather than if we're going to win, which is a really good spot to be in. And yeah, definitely having points on the board is much better than having, well, we might have easier games to come in your back pocket, I would suggest. Simon, you look like you're coming in.
Yeah, I was just going to say, they've been really tough games. You know, you've got an easier fixture list. Connacht and Edinburgh, with what they bring to those games, are not easy games. You know, we were talking earlier on the chat about us putting 100 points on
Ravigo.
That was it. You know, these aren't kind of like, oh, that's a gimme at all. They are, and I think there's something around, okay, we're not winning necessarily, especially the last kind of 3 games. We're playing expansive, amazing rugby. That try Josh Adams scored at the weekend was incredible. Why Edinburgh just stopped when the guy knocked it on. They just stopped and allowed Ben Thomas to turn it over to kind of go, well, you're not going to go from here, are you? But there is an ambition. There was a couple of times, I think there was one in the first half where we're in our 22 and Lloyd throws like a bit of a miss pass to Adams. If that goes to hand, he's away from our own 22. It bounces and he has to come back inside. So there is ambition in that side, but they also have now tempered that with a pragmatism of, when the wind starts blowing and the rain starts coming in, let's put the ball up in the air, let's make a mess of it. And physically, we can be in an arm wrestle with teams and not think, oh, we're just going to get beaten up here. That's what we haven't had. You know, that couple of seasons ago where we got losing bonus points right, left and centre for try scoring losing bonus points. We lacked pragmatism. There were moments where you just want to go, just stop, kick to the corner. This season, every kickoff, the ball has gone out for a line out. Practically, you know, previous seasons we were kicking to contest from our own 22 and from kickoffs. We have got so much more pragmatic, and whether that's Van Ziel or whoever, has just gone, just get off the park, give them a line out, make sure it's like towards the halfway line, and that's when the game starts. The game doesn't start with us catching the kickoff and then we go and throw it wild. So I think, you know, that pragmatism, it's not pretty, but as Tony said, I'd rather get 4 points playing not pretty rugby than 1 point playing, you know, scoring 4 tries but being blown away like we were against Glasgow last season, where everybody's like, oh, but you play such attractive rugby, thank you very much, pat you on the head, but we'll take the 5 points, thank you very much. I like it that people are annoyed about the quality of our games. Who cares? We're winning. You know, it's like that Leicester side back in their pomp. They were just ugly games. They would just win through brute force. It's a win. We don't get many of them. So, you know, I thought that both the Connacht game and the Edinburgh games, they might not have been the most attractive spectacles, but there was, right until the end, you didn't know who was going to win it. And, you know, okay, rugby purist, that, you know, it's all drop kicks and stuff like that. But that's part of the game. and tactically, it's part of the game to kick the ball because you spot a weakness. I'm left cold by 49, 38 games because it's just kind of like, well, if I want to watch that, I'll watch basketball. But if I want to watch that many points, so there's something.
He loves them. There are loads of clips in it for him to put
yeah,
up.
There's something about the rugged way that we've won games that I'm kind of like, actually, Cardiff sides don't do that. So I think this block has shown like a different version of what Cardiff can be.
Fordy, Sean sent in a question on Facebook saying, given our excellent start to the season and his clear interest, what more does Cornel van Zyl need to prove to secure the head coach role permanently? I think it's probably a fair question. What do we make of his performance over these few weeks, picking up on the eve of the season from Matt Sherratt departing?
Yeah, I've been very impressed. I think particularly the fact he almost took the opportunity with two hands as soon as it was offered to him when Sherratt was off. And you kind of compare it to when Sherratt came in, kind of not as much short notice, but at short notice, that Van Zyl's got a more kind of settled squad compared to the one Sherratt had. But I think it's been fantastic. I think it's been an improvement, particularly in our pack, especially since he came in originally. And he seems very aware from like the post-match quotes you see. He seems kind of aware, even in victory, of what we need to work on. And I think that's a kind of, this isn't so much a criticism, but that kind of season when we were winning bonus points constantly, but not winning, it was almost like praising the way that we played, which, given the circumstances, was fair enough. But I do kind of like that approach now of, okay, we won, but what can we do better at? And that's kind of a great approach to have. And yeah, I've been really impressed with him. And from what I've heard on like podcasts, a lot of people seem to highly rate him as well as a coach. Even people who like played against him when he was playing, that they're not surprised he's a good coach. So yeah, I wouldn't be against keeping him on full time.
Absolutely. Simon, another question online, Daniel sent in saying, what do you think is needed recruitment / playing wise to get a top half finish now across the rest of the season? I'm not sure how much money there is there for recruitment necessarily. I think that's a bit of a pipe dream, unfortunately. But where do we need to get better at to make sure that we stay up at the top of the table?
Well, I think Edinburgh and the Dragons worked us out defensively. The Edinburgh 13 was up really quickly. I mean, questionably quickly at times for some on the terrace. But they were when we're pulling it back, they were picking the pull. When the forward was pulling the ball back, they were picking that as well. So I think we need to be aware of that and think about when that gets all a bit stifled in midfield, what are we going to do differently? And I think we can, because I think we've got a decent enough kicking game to do that. I think there's some tough games before Christmas. Going to Italy without our Wales internationals maybe wouldn't be as scary as it has been in the past, just because we've got some good players that aren't currently in the international scene. I think then we've got 2 weeks where we're away in Paris against Stade and then home to Ulster. And then Welsh derbies, I think Scarlets, Dragons, Ospreys. So that's going to take a lot mentally as well to do that. I mean, that Stade game is going to be really interesting, just in terms of what type of team they put out. I mean, I'd go for it. I think if we get a result in Italy, I think we just keep going. You just keep going and keep going and keep going. But it takes a toll on the body. I don't know when will internationals come back for that game. I can't remember when we reintroduce them. They tend to reintroduce them around Europe time, but it depends what shape they're in. I mean, Josh Adams came out with his leg bandaged after half time on Saturday.
He ran off with a knee injury.
Yeah,
that's why he ran off at the 66.
Yeah, but his leg was already bandaged at that point on that knee with a pad on it as well, because I know that was his previous problem, wasn't it? His blood was draining into his knee or something, wasn't it? So you hope that isn't long term. But I mean, as you say, we're not going to bring anybody in. We might, but I can't see it. I think we've just got to go. We've got to go with what we've got, and I think the point made about the coaching setup, the coaching team, has got to take some confidence from this period and go, okay, let's just keep going. But I think working on that attacking shape, so that when we are getting a bit congested, we've got other ways to win games, is going to be important.
Yeah, when pod resumes normal service post autumn internationals, we'll probably preview that block. But I think it's 10 games in 10 weeks is the second block of fixtures, and it's going to make or break the season certainly, but it's going to be a serious slog there, no question about that. That's the first block done for Cardiff. Aware that time is dragging on in this pod. We've covered a lot of stuff, but just quickly touching on the autumn internationals as they're coming up the next few weeks for Wales. Steve Tandy's side play Argentina, Japan, New Zealand, and South Africa, with the Springboks being the out of window test at the end of the window there. We discussed the squad as we recorded after it was announced last week, but just quickly, Tony, what were your thoughts on the squad that Tandy named his first Wales team?
Yeah, good squad. He seems to have put a stamp on it. The Cracknell call-up is a strange one, but we've talked about that already. I hope Cardiff players play well. I hope Cardiff players come back without injuries. That is my hope of the autumn internationals.
Bordy, just from a general Wales point of view, obviously Tandy's coming in. What is it that we're hoping to see from a Tandy team? Or I suppose maybe a different question, considering the low bar that he's starting from, is what would be the priority to fix for Steve Tandy coming in these next few weeks of training?
Well, I think the inclusion of this squad kind of implies he's got a bit of a focus on ball carriers, and with a lot of the players picked, we've always kind of lacked that kind of go forward, and the players he's picked are more natural ball carriers. So I'm hoping something that we've often lacked, getting on the front foot. So I'm hoping there's an element of that is what he's looking at, but it's kind of difficult to know with him having not been a head coach since like 2018. But yeah, ideally, it'd be nice to get some sort of kind of combinations going and some patterns going. So some very tidy players in that squad. Be interesting to see. There's certain players who've not really kind of played with each other before properly. And yeah, it'd be interesting to see if he can kind of develop those combinations that could possibly see Wales to the World Cup and beyond.
Simon, what constitutes a successful autumn from Wales? Might be results, and if so, what are they? But might also just be, is there another way we can measure success this autumn with Tandy coming in?
I think a win. I think they've got to target Japan. That Japan game, I think we should probably have won that series 2-0, to be honest. I think we just collapsed really in the second half in the first test. Be really interesting, Argentina first up. I mean, they have had some incredible games over in the I can't remember what it's called. It used to be the Tri Nations. It's not anymore. I can't remember what it is.
Whatever that is now.
Yeah.
The Rugby Championship.
Rugby Championship, I think they beat New Zealand, didn't they? They pushed South Africa close at home. They're always a tough side. But if we can be competitive in that first game, I don't see any reason why not. I don't think it's that we haven't got the players. I think the coaching, and what we want to see is the coaching being there and the clear game plan of what we want to do, and then that consistently delivered across the games. Because South Africa and New Zealand are just going to turn up and be. I mean, that South Africa victory against New Zealand, that's the most physical. I can't remember the last time I saw a New Zealand side just pummeled in that way. So they can be got at, but I don't think we're the ones to get at them. But a win, I think one win and some clear structure of where we want to go.
Yeah, it's often overused as a word, I feel like, in rugby analysis, but identity will be quite key for Wales. If we come out of the autumn and kind of realise what Tandy's trying to do, that'd be great. But for a long time, we had Pivac, who had a real bipolar thing going on there, where the identity changed week to week depending on what the result was. And then we had Gatland, who had an identity, but it was from about 2009. It hadn't updated at all in the last 16 years, unfortunately. But I think it'll be an interesting one to see how the coaching team clicks as well. But in the end, just which Cardiff players could have a big autumn, which I'd like to make the point that I think Ben Thomas needs a massive autumn here. I think there's a bit of doubt about him at international level, whether fairly or unfairly. I know he's had some good touches, he's had some bad moments, but it's a position that I think has become quite heavily focused on in Wales after Jamie Roberts and the quality that he produced over a long time, but it became quite a key ball carrying position, and that's not necessarily the case across rugby now. It is moving towards the likes of Ben and having playmakers and footballers there, but I think if he has one or two standout games, he could easily just stay at 12 through to the World Cup. Whereas I think if he goes under the radar a little bit or doesn't quite perform to the level that we know he's capable of at Cardiff, then there'll be one or two others, Eddie James when he's fit at the Scarlets, Joe Hawkins coming back in as well, or there'll be a call to bring in people like Kieran Williams or Johnny Williams and just have, real go forward Route 1 stuff from there, if the pack doesn't necessarily produce as we hope it does as well. So big autumn for Ben Thomas, but as Tony says, everybody come back fit and healthy. We've already lost Faletau, so if everybody can be in a good shape for those, whether that's the Stade Francais game that comes straight in for that, or whether they're held back for Ulster or Scarlets in those games a bit later in December, that would be ideal. Any other business from anybody? Any last things to mention? I think we've covered quite a lot there in sort of 90 minutes-ish. So we're going to take a week off next week, definitely, from the pod to recover from this mammoth recording. Obviously, we'll have to put our own feet up ourselves. As I mentioned, I'll look to get one or two specials going over the course of November if we invite Lynn and David on, and whether we try and get a guest on as well. Otherwise, though, we'll be back in that week before the Zebra game. Do listen to the wrap in the meantime. They'll have all Wales stuff covered over the autumn. Hopefully it won't be too depression-inducing in that time. But until then, gents, thank you very much for joining me this evening. Thank you for listening wherever you are, and we'll catch you soon.
Cheers.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.